Welcome to DIYEasyCrafts.com. How to make an easy heart-shaped picture frame, perfect for Valentine's Day gifts. Now this picture frame is just made from a 1-inch, this one's 1 inch by 10 inch piece of pine, standard pine available at any lumber yard. It's a very simple project. You do need a jigsaw, a router, a sander if you have it, and a pin saw would certainly be helpful. You start the project just by drawing a heart onto that piece of wood, and you can make this in a variety of different sizes. You can certainly make variations of the internal heart size and shape. If you are going to have a heart with an arrow through it, just make sure you use a straight edge for the arrow. Otherwise it doesn't look really good if the arrow comes out on a different angle from the other side. I drilled 2 holes through the inside heart, and that's just going to allow me to get the jigsaw blade in it in a minute. And then I started to cut out the outer outline of the large heart. I'm just using a jigsaw. You could certainly use a pin saw or a bandsaw, whatever you have to make the cutout. Jigsaw happens to work really well. This process does not take long at all. So after the outside outline is cut out, or the shape is cut out, I'm then going to put the saw blade of the jigsaw through those drilled holes and cut out the inside heart. And that's where the actual photograph is going to show through. That's going to be the actual picture frame area. Now the next step is to use a router. I didn't make a jig or anything. I'm just going to do this kind of by eye. What you really want to do is just router a groove about a 1/4 inch wide all the way around the heart shape on the back side of your picture frame. And this is going to be a groove that's going to accept the plexiglass and the picture and the cardboard that holds the picture in place. So it doesn't have to be accurate. As long as you give yourself a good 1/4 inch or so, we're going to cut the plexiglass to fit that opening. The next step is I'm going to use a disc grinder. I happen to really like a disc grinder. It's a very easy tool to use. I'm using a flat sanding wheel, but any type of sanding wheel on here will do fine. Of course, the coarser the grit you have, the more material you're going to move faster. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's not so good. You may want to use something in the 80 grit range. You don't want to move too much material. Anyway, you're just going to round over all of the edges with that disc grinder, and then you'll sand later. I went over to the pin saw to cut out the arrow. The pin saw blade is just a little bit narrower than the jigsaw blade, and it allowed me to have a little bit more control and to actually create the arrowhead as well as the feathers on the tail end of the arrow. But you could, if you don't have a pin saw, you could make a very similar picture frame just without the arrow. Now I went back to a sander, and I'm going to really sand this frame pretty well. I started out with 80 grit, and then went to a 220 with the sander, and then after it was completely smooth, all of the edges, all of the rough edges smoothed out, and rounded over as best I could, I actually did a little hand sanding with that same 220 grit sandpaper. And then I went on to a finer grit. I think it was a 400 grit, just to make all those edges real rounded over and real smooth. And this process did not take very long. It's pretty well sanded with that 220 grit on the sander. Now once it's all smooth, you can leave it natural wood and coat it with lacquer, or you can stain it. I decided to stain this one, and this is a dark walnut stain. You can apply the stain, wipe off all the excess, and this has to sit and dry. I usually leave it overnight. After it's dry, I did coat it with a couple of coats of, you can either use polyurethane or lacquer. I used a clear lacquer. And then I took a small piece of plexiglass, and I'm just basically drawing with a Sharpie marker the outline of where that groove is that we created earlier to accept the cardboard and the plexi. So the routed groove. So you're not drawing the inside of the heart, you're drawing the outer edge of that groove. And we're going to cut this plexiglass with a Dremel grinder, with a cutoff wheel. And this Dremel makes quick work of cutting plexi, and it's really nice when you're cutting curves in the plexiglass. When you're not just cutting a straight line. So you can very quickly cut out almost any shape with this. If you don't have a Dremel grinder, you could certainly have routed out a square shape to accept a square plexi on the back of this. So I'm going to remove the protective film from the plexiglass. I'm going to place my photograph, which I just printed out on my printer, and then I cut a small piece of cardboard that is a press fit into that opening. That's going to hold everything in place. I also drilled a little hole on the back of the heart just so that it can be hung on the wall. But if you wanted this to be self-standing, you could certainly make a little bracket that would make it self-standing. Anyway, a very simple, very easy to make heart-shaped picture frame. A very nice do-it-yourself Valentine's Day craft. Now, please check us out on the web at DIYEasyCrafts.com. Be sure to check out our other how-to videos. And if you like this video, I ask that you please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this YouTube channel.